All right, let's dive into prepping for that insurance rating analyst interview.
Sounds good to me.
We're talking about a job that's super important for keeping the insurance market, well, stable.
Right,
We'll
right.
be analyzing trends, figuring out risks, and making sure those premiums are, on point.
Yeah, it's a career where you can have a real impact. And the cool thing is, there's a pretty clear path for moving up.
Oh, how so?
You start as an analyst, then you could become a senior analyst, and then maybe even move into management.
Okay, so lots of potential there. And speaking of impact, let's jump into the first question. Imagine they ask you, walk me through your experience in rating insurance policies.
Classic opener.
I bet. What should someone keep in mind even before they start talking about their experience?
Don't feel like you have to list every single policy you've ever worked on.
Right, it's not about just reciting a list.
Exactly. It's more about like telling your story,
Mm.
showing how your experiences, whether it's from internships, projects you've worked on, even courses you took,
Yeah.
how they all connect to the skills needed for this kind of role. Like, were you analyzing data to figure out the risk?
Right.
Did you use any particular software or models? Things like that.
It's about painting that picture of you being an analytical thinker.
Absolutely. And here's where it gets really cool. RoleCatcher's AI can actually help you customize your answers.
Oh, tell me more about that.
So let's say the job description specifically mentions they want someone with experience in property insurance, right?
Yeah.
RoleCatcher can actually help you highlight the parts of your experience that match up with what they're looking for.
So it's like having a roadmap that's made just for that specific job interview.
Exactly. But it's not just about tailoring your answers. It's also about really emphasizing those problem-solving skills.
Employers love to see that for sure.
Oh, yeah. So maybe you could talk about a specific challenge you face, like an unexpected data point or a time when you had to assess a really complex risk, and then walk them through how you tackled it.
Demonstrating those analytical skills in action. Okay, so moving on to question number 2. This one's all about staying current. How do you stay up to date with changes in the insurance industry?
Super important, especially in such a fast-paced world.
Right, things are always changing and evolving.
Exactly. You've got new regulations popping up all the time, technologies that are constantly evolving, and the market itself never sits still, so you got to show them you're on top of it.
So how do you do that in an interview? What's the best way to show you're engaged with those changes?
Mentioning specific industry publications is a great start. It shows you're actively reading and staying informed.
Like what? What are some examples of publications someone could mention?
You've got the Journal of Insurance, for one. Or you could talk about the NAIE website that's great for keeping up with regulatory updates.
Okay, solid examples.
Mhm.
But reading is one thing. How do you actually apply that knowledge?
Yeah, you've got to connect the dots for them. So, for example, did a recent regulation change how you approach risk assessment? Or maybe a new technology made your analysis more efficient. Bring those real-world examples into your answer.
So it's about showing that deeper level of engagement, not just saying you read stuff.
Exactly. Okay, question 3. How do you ensure accuracy in your rating calculations?
This one feels like it's all about being super detail-oriented.
Absolutely. Attention to detail is non-negotiable in this field, so you got to have a good answer ready.
Right. So walk me through it. What are some things you should highlight?
Well, for starters, talk about the tools and processes you use to make sure your calculations are always on point.
Okay, so like, do you double check your work? Do you use any specific software for quality control?
Yeah, all of that. Maybe you have a system where a colleague reviews your calculations before anything's finalized.
All about showing you've got a system in place.
And you know what else can be super helpful here? RoleCatcher's AI feedback.
Oh, right. We talked about that earlier.
You can actually put your answer into their system, and it'll point out any areas where you could maybe give more specific examples or maybe strengthen your language. It's like having another set of eyes on your work to make sure you're presenting yourself in the best light possible.
I love that. It's about that extra level of polish.
Exactly.
All right, question 4. Get ready, because this one's a balancing act.
Oh, tell me more.
How do you balance the need for profitability with the need for competitive pricing?
I see where the balancing act comes in. That's a good one.
It is. It's not just about crunching the numbers, right?
Yeah.
You have to show that you understand the business side of things too.
Right, right. So it's about understanding how the market works, knowing what your competitors are doing with their pricing,
Yeah.
and of course, keeping the company's financial goals in mind.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is.
Any advice for how to answer this one effectively?
Don't be afraid to get specific. Talk about any pricing models or methodologies you've used before. Like, have you worked with loss ratio analysis? or experience rating.
Okay, because mentioning those shows you really know your stuff.
Exactly. Demonstrate that you can analyze those market trends. You understand the competitive landscape.
And ultimately, that you can make smart pricing decisions. Decisions that make sense for the company's bottom line, but that are also competitive.
Exactly. You've got it.
Okay, let's say you're in the interview and they throw this one at you. Can you explain how you would rate a policy for a high-risk customer?
Ooh, getting into the tricky stuff now.
Right, and it's not as simple as just setting a sky-high premium and calling it a day.
No, no, not at all. You have to show them you can really assess those risks, dig a little deeper.
So what are some things you should be thinking about when you hear a question like that?
Well, first off, what does the customer's claim history look like? That's always a good place to start.
Right, their track record.
Exactly. Then you've got their credit score. And of course, you need to consider the specific type of coverage they're looking for.
Because some types of coverage are inherently riskier than others.
Exactly. And don't forget about any industry benchmarks or regulatory requirements that might come into play.
Oh, right. It's not just about what you think is a fair price. You have to operate within the rules.
Exactly. You got to bring all of that together to come up with a rate that makes sense for the business, but that's also fair. And, this might also be a good opportunity to mention if you have experience with predictive modeling
Oh, good point.
or any experience using those industry standard risk adjustment factors. It shows them you're thinking ahead, being proactive about managing those risks.
Taking those extra steps. Okay, that leads us to another question that's all about being in the know. How do you ensure compliance with regulatory requirements in your rating calculations?
Compliance is huge.
Because the insurance world is full of regulations, right?
Oh, tons of them. And they can change all the time.
So how do you show an interviewer that you're on top of it? That you're not just going to accidentally break some obscure rule?
Well, for starters, don't just say you know the rules. Show them.
Okay, but how do you actually do that in an interview?
Talk about your process for staying up to date. Are there specific newsletters you subscribe to? Webinars you attend?
Oh, good idea.
Maybe there are professional organizations that help you stay informed.
Mentioning those shows you're actively engaged in staying current.
Exactly. And don't forget about any internal resources your company might have.
Oh, give me some examples.
Well, a lot of companies will have a compliance team or maybe even a database of all the latest regulations. So if you've used those in the past, definitely mention it.
Right. It shows you understand how to find the information you need.
Exactly. Okay, let's switch gears a bit with this next one. It's all about communication. Can you walk me through a time when you had to explain a complex rating methodology to a non-technical colleague?
Okay, so this isn't just about knowing the technical stuff. It's about being able to explain it clearly.
Exactly. Not everyone speaks fluent insurance, right?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
So how do you make sure everyone understands, even if they're not an expert in all the technical details?
Think back to a time when you had to break down a complex concept for someone. How did you do it?
Did you use analogies? Or maybe real-world examples to make it relatable?
Yeah. Or even visuals like a whiteboard or some simple diagrams. Anything to make it easier to grasp.
Storytelling. That's a good way to think about it.
Right, because you're not just reciting facts and figures, you're telling a story that helps them connect with the information.
And this actually reminds me of another way RoleCatcher can help you prepare, their video practice tool.
Oh, tell me more about that.
So you can actually record yourself answering this exact question, and their AI will give you feedback on your delivery. Like, how's your tone of voice? Are you making eye contact? What about your pacing? Are you talking too fast or too slow?
It's like having your own personal coach analyzing your every move.
Right. It can be super helpful to see yourself on camera and get that kind of detailed feedback.
Absolutely. It's all about building that confidence, right?
For sure. Okay, back to the questions. This next one really dives into your data skills. How do you analyze and interpret data to inform your rating decisions?
So they want to see that you're not just plugging numbers into a formula.
Right. You have to be able to actually understand what the data means, see the story it's telling.
It's about being a data detective. Like, are there any outliers in the data that stand out?
Oh, good point.
Any interesting correlations you notice? You have to be able to pick out those key insights from a sea of numbers.
It's about being able to tell the story behind the numbers. And then just as importantly,
You have to be able to explain it to other people.
right, you've got to communicate those insights in a way that's clear, concise, and actionable.
Because at the end of the day, it's about using those insights to make better decisions.
Okay, question 9 time for a little pressure. Can you give an example of a time when you had to make a difficult pricing decision?
They want to see how you handle those tough calls.
Right, because in this job, you're going to encounter situations where there's no easy answer.
So think back to a situation where you had to make a tough choice. Maybe you had to weigh conflicting priorities. Or maybe the information you were working with was really complex or even incomplete.
How did you approach the situation?
Exactly. What factors did you consider? And how did you ultimately arrive at your decision?
And don't be afraid to talk about the challenges you faced along the way.
Right. It's not about pretending you had all the answers.
It's about showing that you can think critically, that you can weigh the options carefully, and that you can make a decision even when it's tough.
And even if, looking back, you might have done things differently. Even mentioning those lessons learned shows you're able to learn and grow from your experiences.
You show self-awareness. Okay, last question for this round. How do you collaborate with other departments, such as underwriting or claims, to ensure accurate rating decisions?
Ah, yes, teamwork. So important in this field.
Because you're rarely working in a silo, right?
Right, it's all about collaboration.
So how do you demonstrate that collaborative spirit in an interview?
Think about how you communicate with other departments. Do you make an effort to share information openly and proactively?
Right, because nobody wants to work with someone who hoards information.
Exactly. And how do you build those relationships with colleagues in other departments? Those are the kinds of things you want to highlight in your answer.
It's really about understanding that a successful rating decision, more often than not, needs input from different teams. Right?
Exactly. It's not a one-person show.
Sharing information is key, working together towards a shared goal.
Right. It's about seeing the bigger picture and how each department plays a role.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up this interview prep session, I wanted to circle back to RoleCatcher's AI.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because it's more than just like a website with a bunch of interview questions on it, right?
Way more. I like to think of it as a personalized career coach.
I like that.
It's there to help you every step of the way.
Right, from fine-tuning your answers to tailoring your approach for specific companies.
It's like having a secret weapon for your job search.
I love that. So how does it work? I mean, how does it actually help you tailor your approach?
It analyzes job descriptions.
Okay.
And it picks out the key things that company is looking for.
And then uses that information to help you put your best foot forward.
Exactly. So you can stop second-guessing yourself and just focus on showcasing your skills, your experience, and of course,
Your passion.
yes, because companies, they want to see that you're genuinely excited about this field.
Oh, absolutely. Enthusiasm goes a long way.
It shows them you're there for the right reasons, that you actually want to learn and grow with their company.
Couldn't agree more. Now, before we wrap up completely, I want to encourage everyone listening to head over to RoleCatcher's website, sign up for a free account, check out all the cool resources they have.
Try out those AI-powered tools.
Yes, you won't regret it.
And as you're on this journey to becoming an insurance rating analyst, remember, you have the power to make a real difference in this field.
That's a great point.
You'll be assessing risk, making sure things are fair. You'll be playing a part in the financial stability of this really important industry.
That's something to be proud of. Now go out there, ace those interviews, and embrace this exciting world of insurance rating.